The message came at 3:47 hours ship time. It was weak and full of static. The computer almost deleted it as garbage data, but something in the pattern made it pause, something that sounded like words. Admiral Kang Minyu was sleeping in his quarters when his communicator beeped. He opened his eyes immediately. After 30 years in the Terran Defense Fleet, he had learned to wake up fast. Sleep was a luxury. Alerts were not. "Admiral, you need to come to the bridge," said the voice of Lieutenant Commander Park Yuna. She sounded calm, but Minyu knew her well enough to hear the tension underneath. He dressed in 3 minutes and walked through the metal corridors of the TSS Horizon. The ship was quiet at this hour. Most of the crew was resting. The Horizon was the flagship of the Terran Third Fleet, and she carried over 2,000 souls. All of them trusted Minyu to keep them alive. The bridge was dark except for the glow of screens. Yuna stood near the communication station with 2 other officers. They all turned when Minyu entered. "Play it," he said. Yuna pressed a button. The speakers crackled with static, and then a voice came through. It was high and musical, like wind chimes in a storm. But the words were translated by the computer into flat, cold text on the screen. "This is Ambassador Ethira of the Velari Sovereignty. Our world is under attack. The Skarn have breached our orbital defenses. They are landing on our cities. Millions are dying. We beg anyone who hears this message, please, send help, please." The message repeated and repeated and repeated. Minyu listened to it 3 times. He watched the translation scroll across the screen. He saw the fear in those words. He had seen fear before. He had felt it himself many times. But there was something else in this message, something that made his chest tight. Hope. The ambassador still had hope that someone would answer. "Where did this come from?" Minyu asked. "The Velari system," Yuna replied. "It's in the outer territories near the edge of Council space, 18 days away at maximum warp." "And the Galactic Council?" Yuna's face was carefully blank. "They received the same message 6 hours ago. They voted not to respond. The official statement says the Skarn threat is too great and resources cannot be spared for a lost cause." Minyu felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Galactic Council was made up of 12 species, each one older and more advanced than humanity. They had faster ships, better weapons, and more soldiers, but they had decided to let the Velari die. "What do we know about the Skarn?" he asked. Another officer, a young man named Kim Junho, pulled up files on his screen. "They are a hive species, sir. They consume organic matter to reproduce. They have already destroyed 3 star systems in the past decade. No one has successfully fought them off." "No one has tried," Yuna said quietly. Minyu looked at her. She met his eyes without flinching. They had served together for 12 years. She knew what he was thinking before he said it. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. 47 combat vessels in the Third Fleet, 20 destroyers, 15 cruisers, 8 carriers, and 4 battleships including the Horizon. Crew count: approximately 38,000 personnel across all ships. Minyu was quiet for a long moment. 38,000 lives, 38,000 families waiting for them to come home. He thought about his own daughter who was finishing medical school back on Earth. He thought about the letters he had not written, the calls he had not made. Then he thought about the Velari. He thought about their children, their families, their homes burning while the galaxy watched and did nothing. "The Council thinks we are primitives," Minyu said slowly. "They think humans are violent and dangerous. They classify our planet as a death world. They believe we are monsters." "Sir," Junho looked confused. "Maybe they are right," Minyu continued. "Maybe we are monsters, but we are the kind of monsters who do not ignore cries for help." He turned to Yuna. "Send a message to all ships. Full fleet briefing in 1 hour. We leave in 6. Yuna did not hesitate. "Yes, Admiral." The next 6 hours were chaos. Crews scrambled to prepare for an unplanned mission. Engineers checked engines and weapons. Medical teams loaded extra supplies. Marines sharpened their blades and cleaned their guns. Word spread through the fleet like fire. They were going to fight the Skarn. They were going to save the Velari. Many soldiers felt fear. Some felt excitement. But underneath all of it was something else: pride. The Galactic Council had called humanity dangerous. They had kept Earth isolated for decades, afraid of what humans might do. They saw strength as a threat. They saw courage as madness. But now, when the darkness came, the Council hid behind their walls, and humanity chose to march into the fire. Admiral Menu stood on the bridge as the fleet prepared to jump. Around him, officers moved with purpose. Screens showed the status of every ship, green lights across the board. Yuna approached him with a tablet. "Sir, we received a response from Earth Command." "What did they say?" "They said," she paused and almost smiled, "they said, 'Good hunting, Admiral, bring our people home.'" Minu nodded. That was all he needed. "All ships," he said into the fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Kang Minu. In a few minutes we will enter slipspace. We will travel for 18 days, and then we will fight." He paused, letting the words settle. "The Velari do not know us. They have never met a human. They do not know our faces or our names, but they called for help. They called into the void, hoping someone would answer, and we will answer." His voice grew stronger. "The Galactic Council says the Velari are a lost cause. They say the Skarn cannot be stopped. They say we should not waste our lives on strangers. But I say this: if we do not fight for strangers, then we do not deserve to call ourselves human." He looked out the viewport at the stars. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We learned to fight because we had no choice. But we also learned something else. We learned that survival means nothing if we lose our souls." He took a breath. "Today we fight for people we have never met. We fight for a world we have never seen. We fight because it is right. And when the Velari ask why we came, we will tell them the truth, because you asked." The channel was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, ships began to respond. TSS Sejong standing by. TSS Gwangido standing by. TSS Yulji standing by. 47 ships, 38,000 voices, all saying the same thing. "We are coming." The fleet jumped into slipspace, and the stars stretched into lines of light. Ahead of them lay 18 days of travel, an unknown enemy, and almost certain death. Behind them, they left a galaxy that had given up hope. Admiral Kang Minu sat in his chair and watched the swirling colors of slipspace. He did not know if they would win. He did not know if any of them would survive. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The SOS had not been ignored. Humanity was coming. The Velari had been watching Earth for 200 years. They had seen the blue planet from far away, through their powerful telescopes and sensor arrays. They had studied it like scientists study a dangerous animal behind glass. The reports were terrifying. Earth was classified as a Category 12 hostile world. This was the highest danger rating the Galactic Council used. Most intelligent species evolved on peaceful worlds with stable climates, gentle gravity, and calm weather. Earth was none of these things. The gravity was crushing. A Velari would struggle to walk on Earth's surface. Their thin bones would crack under the weight of their own bodies. The atmosphere was poison. Oxygen was a corrosive gas that burned through metals and killed most organic life. Humans breathed it like water. The weather was violent. Storms that covered entire continents, waves of heat that baked the ground, walls of ice that froze everything in their path. The planet itself seemed designed to kill. And the animals, oh, the animals. Earth was filled with predators that hunted and killed without mercy. Giant cats with claws like knives, bears that stood 3 meters tall, sharks that swam through the oceans like living missiles, insects that carried diseases capable of killing millions. The Velari researchers had one question that they could never answer. How did anything survive on that planet? The answer was simple. Humans did not just survive, they conquered. They learned to use fire when they were still living in caves. They built weapons from stone and wood. They hunted the predators until the predators learned to fear them. They spread across every corner of their death world, adapting to deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. And then they started killing each other. Human history was written in blood, wars that lasted decades, weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. They had nearly wiped themselves out several times. The Galactic Council believed it was only a matter of time before they finished the job. But they never did. Somehow, impossibly, humans kept surviving. They kept building. They kept reaching for the stars. When humanity finally achieved space travel, the Council was horrified. They had hoped the Deathworlders would stay on their planet forever. Instead, they burst into the galaxy like a force of nature. The Council responded by isolating Earth. They refused to share technology. They blocked humans from joining the galactic community. They spread warnings about the dangerous primitives from the hostile world. And humans responded by building everything themselves. Now, 18 days into their journey to the Velari system, the crew of the Terran Third Fleet prepared for war. Captain Beek Sunwoo stood in the cargo bay of the transport ship TSS Mugunghwa. Around him, 300 Marines sat in rows, checking their equipment. The bay smelled like oil and sweat and fear. Sunwoo was 42 years old. He had gray at his temples and scars on his hands. He had fought in 3 campaigns and lost good friends in each one. He knew what war looked like. He knew how it smelled. He also knew how it ended, usually with fire and screaming and young people dying far from home. "Listen up," he said, and the bay went quiet. "I know you have all read the briefings. I know you have seen the pictures, so I am not going to lie to you. The Skarn are dangerous. They are fast and strong, and they do not feel pain like we do. They will try to eat you alive." A few soldiers shifted nervously. Sunwoo let them feel it. But here is what the briefings do not tell you. The Skarn have never fought humans before. They have conquered species that run from danger, species that surrender when things get hard, species that give up. He paused. "We do not give up. We are from Earth. Our ancestors fought wolves with rocks. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They climbed the highest mountains just to see what was on the other side. Giving up is not in our blood." Sergeant Choi Hana sat in the front row. She was 30 years old with short black hair and steady hands. She was a combat medic, trained to save lives in the middle of battle. She had patched up more wounds than she could count. She listened to Sunwoo's speech with a calm expression. She had heard speeches like this before. They were meant to inspire courage. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they did not. But she believed in the mission. She believed in helping people who could not help themselves. That was why she became a medic in the first place. Next to her sat Private Lee Do-yun. He was 19 years old, barely out of training. His hands were shaking slightly as he checked his rifle for the 5th time. Hana noticed. "First real mission?" she asked quietly. Do-yun nodded. "I trained for 2 years. I thought I was ready, but now—" He swallowed hard. "The Skarn sound like monsters from nightmares." Hana considered her words carefully. "They are monsters, but you know what? So are we. The galaxy calls us Deathworlders for a reason. We are the thing that monsters fear." Do-yun looked at her. "You really believe that?" "I know it," Hana said. "I have seen humans do impossible things. I have seen soldiers carry their wounded friends for kilometers through enemy fire. I have seen medics perform surgery during artillery strikes. I have seen people refuse to die simply because they were too stubborn to quit." She put a hand on his shoulder. "You are one of us. That makes you more dangerous than any alien bug. On another ship, Dr. Moon Jihai sat in her laboratory surrounded by screens and data. She was the chief xenobiologist of the fleet, responsible for understanding alien life forms. Right now, she was studying everything they knew about the Skarn. It was not much. The Skarn were a hive species, controlled by a single overmind. The drones had no individual thoughts or desires. They existed only to serve the hive. They consumed organic matter to reproduce, turning entire planets into breeding grounds. Their bodies were covered in hard shells that could stop most projectiles. They had multiple limbs ending in sharp claws. They could survive in vacuum for short periods. They were, by any measure, perfect killing machines. But Jihai had found something interesting, a weakness. The Skarn could not regulate their body temperature. They relied on the environment around them to stay warm or cool. On their homeworld, the temperature was always perfect. They had never needed to adapt. Humans were different. Human bodies could sweat to cool down and shiver to warm up. Humans could survive in deserts where the temperature reached 50 degrees. They could survive in Arctic regions where it dropped to -50. This was an advantage. Jihai sent her findings to the command staff. If they could use extreme temperatures against the Skarn, they might have a chance. Fire and ice, the weapons of Earth itself. Admiral Kang Minyu read Jihai's report in his quarters. He nodded slowly, making notes on his tablet. Every piece of information helped. Every advantage mattered. He had spent the past 18 days planning the battle. He knew the odds were against them. The Skarn had millions of drones. The Terran fleet had 38,000 people. But numbers were not everything. Courage mattered, training mattered, and most importantly, the will to fight mattered. The Galactic Council had given up because they did not believe victory was possible. They calculated the odds and decided the risk was too high. Humans did not think like that. Humans had a saying, "It is not the size of the dog in the fight, it is the size of the fight in the dog." The Terran Third Fleet was small, but the fight in them was enormous. Lieutenant Commander Park Yuna entered Minyu's quarters with the latest updates. "We drop out of slipspace in 6 hours, Admiral. The fleet is ready." "And the crew?" "Scared," Yuna admitted, "but determined. They know what we are facing. They chose to come anyway." Minyu stood and walked to his viewport. Stars streaked past as the ship traveled through slipspace. Somewhere ahead, a world was burning. People were dying, and the rest of the galaxy had turned away. "The Velari do not know we are coming," he said quietly. "They probably think they are alone. They probably think no one heard their cries." "They will know soon," Yuna said. Minyu nodded. "Yes, they will." He turned to face her. In his eyes was something hard and bright, something that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and world wars, something that refused to accept defeat. "We are Deathworlders," he said. "The galaxy fears us because they do not understand us. They think we are violent, they think we are cruel, but they are wrong." He put on his uniform jacket and straightened his shoulders. "We are not cruel, we just refuse to give up, and that makes us more dangerous than anything they have ever seen." 6 hours later, the fleet dropped out of slipspace. Ahead of them, the Velari system burned with fire. The battle had begun. The Velari homeworld looked like a dying star. From orbit, Admiral Kang Minyu could see the fires burning across the continents. Smoke covered entire regions. The beautiful crystal cities that the Velari had built over thousands of years were crumbling into ash. And above the planet, the Skarn bioships circled like vultures waiting for a meal. There were hundreds of them, massive organic vessels that looked more like living creatures than machines. Their hulls pulsed with a sickly green light. They moved in swirling patterns, surrounding the planet in a net of death. "Contact," Lieutenant Commander Park Yuna said. Her voice was tight but controlled. "Enemy fleet detected. 312 bioships, they have seen us. Admiral Minu stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, officers worked at their stations with focused precision. Fear was in the air, but discipline was stronger. "What about Velari ships?" Minu asked. "Minimal presence, sir." Yuna checked her screens. "Most of their orbital defenses have been destroyed. I am detecting one cruiser still active, but it is heavily damaged and venting atmosphere." One ship, out of an entire fleet. That was all that remained of the Velari Sovereignty Space Force. "Life signs on that cruiser." 47, sir, but falling. They do not have much time. Minu made his decision in seconds. "Commander Otiwu," he said into his communicator, "take the Sejong and 3 destroyers. Punch a hole to that cruiser and get those people out." On the destroyer TSS Sejong, Commander Otiwu received the order with a grim smile. He was 50 years old with a face like weathered stone. He had been in the fleet longer than most of his crew had been alive. "You heard the Admiral," he said to his bridge officers. "Full speed ahead, weapons hot. Let us show these bugs what Terran destroyers can do." The Sejong surged forward, followed by 3 sister ships. They cut through space like arrows, heading directly into the swarm. The Skarn reacted immediately. Dozens of bioships turned to face the incoming destroyers. Their weapons were organic too, streams of acidic projectiles and razor-sharp spines launched at incredible speeds. "Evasive maneuvers," Tiwu ordered. "Return fire with everything we have." The Sejong's railguns roared to life. These weapons did not use explosives or energy beams. They used simple physics, metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic fields. Each shot hit with the force of a small bomb. The first Skarn ship exploded as a railgun slug tore through its hull. Green fluid sprayed into space. The creature screamed on frequencies that made the communication channels crackle with static. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. "Target destroyed." "Keep firing," Tiwu said. "Do not stop until we reach that cruiser." Across the battlefield, the main Terran fleet engaged the Skarn swarm. Admiral Minu had positioned his ships in a defensive formation, with the carriers in the center and the battleships forming a protective ring. The carriers launched fighters, small, fast ships piloted by humans who had trained their whole lives for this moment. They swarmed around the Skarn bioships like angry bees, firing missiles and strafing with energy weapons. "All ships focus fire on the larger targets," Minu commanded. "Take out their command vessels first." The battle was chaos. Ships exploded. Debris filled the void. Skarn drones launched themselves at Terran vessels, trying to breach their hulls and reach the crew inside. But the humans were ready. On the cruiser TSS Gwangido, Captain Shin Yunji led the defense against boarders. The Skarn had managed to cut through the outer airlock and were pouring into the corridors. They were fast and vicious, with claws that could cut through combat armor. Yunji stood at the front of her Marines, a rifle in her hands and fury in her eyes. "They want to eat us," she shouted. "Let them choke on our bullets." The Marines opened fire. Skarn drones fell by the dozens, but more kept coming. They crawled over the bodies of their dead, driven by the will of the Overmind. "Fall back to Junction 7, Yunji ordered. "Set up the flamers." The flame weapons were a new addition to the Terran arsenal. Dr. Moon Jihai's research had revealed the Skarn's weakness to temperature. The engineers had worked around the clock during the journey to build weapons that could exploit it. The first blast of fire caught the Skarn completely off guard. They had never experienced heat like this. Their shells cracked. Their bodies cooked from the inside. The creatures screamed and thrashed, but the Marines did not stop. "Keep burning them," Yunji yelled. "Do not let a single one through." Meanwhile, Commander Tiwu's group had reached the damaged Velari cruiser. It was a beautiful ship, or it had been once. Its hull was made of something that looked like white crystal, now cracked and blackened by weapons fire. "Docking team, move," Tiwu ordered. "We do not have much time." Ensign Kim Minji piloted the rescue shuttle. She was 24 years old, with steady nerves and fast reflexes. She had won 3 flight competitions back on Earth. Now she was using those skills to save lives. The shuttle connected to the Velari cruiser with a grinding thump. Immediately, the rescue team moved inside. The air was thin and cold. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Bodies lay in the corridors, Velari who had not survived the attack. Sergeant Choi Hana led the medical team. She stepped over the bodies with professional calm, looking for survivors. The Velari were tall and thin, with skin that looked like pale blue glass. Their eyes were large and dark, adapted for the dim light of their world. "Over here," one of her team called. Hana ran to find a group of Velari huddled in a cargo bay. Most were wounded. Many were barely alive. But at the center of the group was someone who still stood. Ambassador Ithira. Hana recognized her from the distress message. The ambassador's crystalline skin was cracked in several places, leaking a fluid that might have been blood, but her eyes were still alert, still fighting. "Who are you?" Ithira asked in her musical voice. The translator in Hana's ear converted it to words she could understand. "We are human," Hana said. "We came to help." Ithira stared at her. For a long moment she did not seem to understand. Human, but the Galactic Council. "The Council did not come," Hana said gently. "We did." Tears began to fall from Ithira's large eyes. They sparkled like diamonds as they rolled down her cracked face. "You came," she whispered. "You actually came." "Yes," Hana said. "Now let us get you out of here." The evacuation took 12 minutes. 12 minutes of carrying wounded Velari through broken corridors while the ship groaned and shook around them. 12 minutes of hopping the hull would not collapse. Minji kept the shuttle steady, ready to detach at any moment. Come on," she muttered under her breath. "Move faster." Finally, Hana's voice came through the communicator. "Last survivor aboard, we are clear." Detaching now. Minji pulled the shuttle away just as the Velari cruiser broke apart. Metal and crystal scattered into space. The ship that had carried Ambassador Ithira and her people was gone forever. But 42 Velari survived. Back on the main battlefield, the tide was turning. The Terran fleet had destroyed over 100 Skarn bioships. The alien swarm was beginning to pull back, retreating toward the planet. Admiral Minyu watched the tactical display with narrowed eyes. "They are regrouping. They did not expect us to fight this hard." "Sir," Yuna said, "the ground forces are requesting permission to launch." Minyu nodded. The space battle was only the first step. The real fight would be on the surface. The Skarn overmind was down there somewhere, controlling the entire hive. If they could kill it, the Skarn would fall. "Tell Captain Beek Sunwoo to begin the drop," Minyu ordered, "and tell him good luck." On the transport ship Mugunghwa, the Marines prepared for atmospheric entry. They climbed into drop pods, small metal capsules designed to survive the brutal heat of re-entry. Private Lee Do-yeon sat in his pod, his heart pounding. In a few minutes, he would be falling through fire toward a hostile planet. He might not survive the landing. He might be killed by Skarn within seconds of touching ground. But he did not ask to stay behind. He did not beg for mercy. He sat in his pod and waited for the signal. Because that was what humans did. They faced their fear and kept going anyway. "All Marines," Captain Sunwoo's voice came through the speakers. "Drop in 30 seconds. Remember your training, remember why we are here, and remember we do not leave anyone behind." The countdown reached 0. The pods launched. 300 Marines fell toward the burning planet below, surrounded by fire and smoke and death. The ground war had begun. The drop pods hit the surface like metal rain. They slammed into the ground at speeds that would kill most living things, but humans had designed them to survive. Private Lee Do-yun felt the impact shake every bone in his body. The pod cracked open automatically, and he rolled out into chaos. The Velari capital city was burning. Crystal towers that had stood for centuries were now broken stumps. Streets that once sparkled with light were covered in ash and rubble, and everywhere, there were scarn. They came out of the ruins like shadows, fast and silent, with claws that gleamed in the firelight. Their shells were dark gray, almost black, and their eyeless faces turned toward the Marines with hungry focus. "Contact front," someone shouted. Do-yun raised his rifle and fired. The first shot hit a Scarn drone in the chest, punching through its shell. Green fluid sprayed out. The creature stumbled but kept coming. He fired again, and again. Finally, the drone fell. But 3 more took its place. Form up, Captain Beak Sunwoo's voice cut through the chaos. He moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, his rifle spitting fire. Do not let them separate us. The Marines pulled together, forming a defensive circle. They had trained for this. They knew that isolation meant death. Together they were strong. Apart they were prey. Sergeant Choi Hana worked in the center of the formation. She had already treated 4 wounded Marines, pulling bullets, no spines, out of their bodies. The Scarn weapons were organic and they left nasty wounds. "Hold still," she told a young soldier whose arm was torn. "This will hurt." She did not have time for gentle bedside manner. She cleaned the wound, injected antibiotics, and wrapped it in seconds. The soldier was back fighting within a minute. "Thanks, Sarge," he gasped. "Thank me when we survive," Hana replied. The Marines pushed forward, street by street, building by building. Their objective was a massive structure at the center of the city, a Velari government building that the Scarn had turned into their primary hive. According to the intelligence reports, the Overmind was somewhere beneath it. The fighting was brutal. The Scarn did not retreat. They did not surrender. They threw themselves at the humans with mindless fury, driven by a will that was not their own. But the humans did not break. Corporal No Seung led his squad through a narrow alley. The walls on either side were covered with some kind of organic material. The Scarn were already transforming the city into a nest. "I hate this," one of his soldiers muttered. "It smells like death." "It is death," Seung replied. "Keep moving." They reached the end of the alley and found a nightmare, a breeding pit. Dozens of Velari bodies lay in the organic goo, being slowly consumed. Their faces were frozen in expressions of terror. Seung felt his stomach twist, but he had a job to do. "Flamers," he ordered. His squad burned the pit until nothing remained but ash. It would not bring the victims back, but at least no more Scarn would spawn from their bodies. Captain Sunwoo reached the entrance to the underground tunnels. The Scarn had dug deep, creating a network that spread beneath the entire city. The Overmind was down there. He could feel it somehow, a presence at the edge of his mind, cold and alien. "Radio check," he said. "All squads report." The responses came back one by one. They had lost 23 Marines so far, 23 good soldiers who would never go home. Sunwoo added their names to the list in his mind. He would remember them. He always did. "We go down," he announced. "Stay tight, watch your corners, and if you see anything big, shoot it until it stops moving." The tunnels were dark and hot. The walls pulsed with organic matter. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in, clicks and scrapes and something that might have been breathing. Private Do-yun stayed close to Sergeant Hana. He had stopped shaking somewhere during the surface battle. Now he moved with a calm he did not know he had. "You are doing well," Hana told him quietly. "I am terrified," he admitted. "Good, fear keeps you alive. Stupidity gets you killed." They pushed deeper into the tunnels. The Scarn attacks came in waves. drones pouring out of side passages, overwhelming them with numbers. The Marines fought them off with bullets and fire and bare hands when necessary. One soldier, Corporal Bang Yejin, ran out of ammunition during a fight. She grabbed a scarn by its claws and threw it into the wall. Then she picked up a piece of rubble and beat it to death. Her squad stared at her. "What?" she said, breathing hard. It was either that or die. 6 hours into the tunnel assault, they found the Overmind. It was massive. It filled an entire cavern, a pulsing mountain of flesh and chitin. Tendrils spread out from its body, connecting to the walls, the floor, the ceiling. This was the brain of the hive, the thing that controlled every scarn on the planet. And it knew they were there. The air itself seemed to press against them. Do-yun felt something pushing at his mind, a cold, alien presence trying to break through. He gritted his teeth and forced it back. "Hold formation," Sunwoo ordered. His voice was strained. Even he was feeling the pressure. "Do not let it inside your head." The Overmind screamed, not with sound but with thought. Images flooded the Marines' minds, visions of their deaths, their bodies being consumed, their bones becoming part of the hive. Some soldiers fell to their knees, others vomited, but none of them ran. "Fight it," Hana shouted. She grabbed Do-yun's arm and pulled him forward. "It is just a bug, a big, ugly bug, and we are exterminators." Sunwoo pushed through the mental assault and approached the Overmind. In his hands, he carried a cylinder about the size of his forearm. It was warm to the touch. An antimatter charge, enough energy to destroy a small mountain. The Overmind's tendrils lashed out at him. They were fast, faster than anything that size should be. But Sunwoo was faster. He dodged and rolled, years of training guiding his body. "Cover me," he yelled. The Marines opened fire. Bullets tore into the Overmind's flesh. It screamed again, and this time the sound was real, a shriek that shook the cavern. Sunwoo reached the base of the creature. He found a gap in its shell, a place where the armor was thin. He shoved the antimatter charge inside. "Armed," he said into his radio. "Everyone out now." The retreat was chaos. Marines ran through the tunnels as fast as they could, climbing over bodies and debris. Behind them, Scarn drones poured after them, driven mad by the pain of their Overmind. Do-yun's legs burned. His lungs screamed for air, but he kept running. "Move, move, move." Hana was behind him, pushing him forward. "Do not stop." They burst out of the tunnel entrance and kept going. The surface was no safer. Scarn were everywhere, thrashing and confused without the Overmind's guidance. Sunwoo was the last one out. He hit the detonator. The explosion was unlike anything Do-yun had ever seen. A column of light erupted from the ground, bright enough to blind. The earth shook so hard he lost his footing. A wave of heat washed over them. And then silence. All across the planet the Scarn stopped. Their movements became jerky, uncoordinated. Some fell over and did not get up. Others wandered in circles until Marines put them down. The hive mind was dead. Without it, the drones were nothing. Do-yun lay on the ground, staring at the sky. The smoke was clearing. He could see stars. Hana appeared above him, her face covered in ash and blood. She was smiling. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." Do-yun laughed. It was a strange sound, almost hysterical. "I cannot believe I am alive." "Neither can I," Hana offered him her hand. "But here we are." Captain Sunwoo stood at the edge of the crater where the Overmind had been. His face was blank, his eyes distant. He was thinking about the soldiers they had lost, the ones who would not celebrate this victory. But they had won. Against all odds, against an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations, they had won. He touched his communicator. "Sunwoo to fleet, the Overmind is dead, the Scarn are finished. Mission accomplished." Admiral Minu's voice came back, tired but proud. "Well done, Captain, well done." The sun was rising over the Velari capital. It was the first sunrise the city had seen in weeks, without scarred ships blocking the sky. A new day was beginning, and humanity had given it to them. 3 weeks after the battle, the Velari capital was beginning to heal. The fires were out. The bodies had been buried. The scarred remains had been burned and scattered. The city would never be the same. Too much had been lost. But for the first time in months, there was hope. Ambassador Ithira stood at the entrance of a temporary shelter, watching the sunrise. Her crystalline skin was still cracked in places, and she walked with a limp. But she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. A human shuttle landed nearby, and Admiral Kang Minyu stepped out. He was wearing his dress uniform, the formal one, with all his medals and ribbons. Behind him came several of his officers, including Lieutenant Commander Park Yuna and Captain Beek Sunwoo. Ithira moved to meet them. Her steps were slow but steady. "Admiral Kang," she said, her voice still musical despite everything. "Thank you for coming." Minyu bowed slightly. It was a gesture of respect that he had learned from her people. "Ambassador, I am glad to see you recovering." "Thanks to your people." Ithira looked at Sunwoo and Yuna. "Thanks to all of you." She led them into the shelter. It was a simple space, filled with survivors and relief workers. Velari and humans worked side by side, handing out food and medical supplies. The scene would have been unthinkable a month ago. They reached a private room at the back. It was sparse, just a table and some chairs, but it was quiet, and that was enough. "Please sit," Ithira said. They sat. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of everything that had happened hung in the air between them. Finally, Ithira broke the silence. "I have a question," she said. "I have had it since the moment your medic told me who she was. I have thought about it every day since then, and I still do not understand." Minyu nodded. "Ask." "Why?" Ithira's large eyes glistened. "Why did you come? You did not know us. You had no treaty with us. The Galactic Council warned everyone about your kind. They said you were dangerous, unpredictable, violent. They told us to fear you." She paused, gathering herself. "And yet when we called for help, when every other species turned away, you came. You sent your fleet. You sent your soldiers. You sacrificed your people for strangers you had never met." Her voice cracked. "We have nothing to offer you. Our fleet is destroyed. Our economy is ruined. Our population is a fraction of what it was. We cannot pay you. We cannot help you. We are broken." Tears fell from her eyes like liquid crystals. "So why did you do this?" Admiral Minyu was quiet for a long moment. He looked at his officers, then back at Ithira. When he spoke, his voice was soft but firm. 300 years ago," he began, "my ancestors lived on a small peninsula on Earth. They were invaded by a powerful neighbor. Millions died. Cities were burned. Families were torn apart. The world watched, but few came to help." He paused, remembering stories his grandfather had told him. "Eventually, soldiers from other nations arrived. They fought alongside my people. They bled and died on our soil, not for money, not for territory, simply because they believed it was right." He met Ithira's eyes. "My grandmother was a child during that war. She would have died if a foreign doctor had not found her in the rubble and carried her to safety. That doctor did not speak her language. He did not know her name, but he saved her anyway." Minyu's voice grew stronger. "I exist because of the kindness of strangers. My entire family line exists because someone chose to help when they did not have to. How could I do any less?" Captain Sunwoo spoke next. "We humans have a strange relationship with suffering. We have experienced so much of it from our planet, from each other. We know what it feels like to be alone, to cry out for help and hear only silence." He looked at his scarred hands. "When we heard your message, we did not see strangers. We saw ourselves. We saw our own history, and we knew that we could not look away." Sergeant Choi Hana had entered the room quietly. She stood by the door listening. "Ambassador," she said, "you called us Deathworlders, and you are right. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day. We evolved surrounded by danger and death." She stepped forward. "But that is exactly why we could not ignore you. We understand suffering better than anyone in this galaxy. We have seen the worst of what existence can offer, and we decided long ago that we would fight against it, not just for ourselves, but for everyone." Ithira listened in silence. The tears were still falling, but something else was in her eyes now, something like understanding. "The Galactic Council calls us violent," Yuna added. "They call us dangerous, and maybe they are right. We are violent. We are dangerous, but we are violent against injustice. We are dangerous to those who hurt the innocent." She shrugged. "We are not peaceful, but we are good. At least we try to be." Admiral Minu stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see humans and Velari working together. Children were playing in the streets, the first time in months they had felt safe enough to play. "Ambassador," he said, "you asked why we came. The answer is simple. We came because you asked." He turned to face her. "In our culture there is an old concept. We call it humanity. It does not mean being human. It means being kind, being compassionate, helping others even when it costs you something." His voice was firm. "The galaxy may think we are monsters. Let them. But monsters do not cross the stars to save strangers. Monsters do not sacrifice their lives for people they have never met. We are not monsters. We are human. And being human means answering when someone cries for help." Ithira rose slowly from her seat. She approached Minu and stood before him. She was taller than him, as all Velari were, but in that moment she looked small, fragile, grateful. "On my world," she said quietly, "there is a gesture. It is our deepest sign of respect. It means that one person has given another a gift beyond measure, a gift of life." She bowed low, lower than any Velari had ever bowed to an outsider. "You have given my people that gift, Admiral Kang. You have given us our lives, our future, our hope." She straightened and looked at him with shining eyes. "The Galactic Council warned us that your world made you cruel. They were wrong. Your world made you kind. It made you understand what truly matters. And for that, the Velari will be grateful for as long as our species exists." Minu felt something warm in his chest. It was pride, not for himself but for his people, for his species, for the billions of humans who had chosen again and again to be better than their circumstances. "Ambassador," he said, "we do not need your gratitude. We only ask one thing." "Anything." Minu smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and human. "When another species calls for help, when another world sends out an SOS into the void, we ask that you answer. We ask that you remember what it felt like to be alone, and we ask that you choose to be the stranger who comes to help." Ithira nodded slowly. "I swear it, on my life and the lives of all Velari, we will answer." "Then that is enough." Months later, the Galactic Council received a new application for membership. The Velari sovereignty had rebuilt enough to participate in galactic affairs again, and they had one demand before joining. Earth must be accepted into the Council as well. The debates were fierce. Many species still feared humanity. They pointed to human history, to the wars and weapons and violence. They called them unpredictable, dangerous. But Ambassador Ithira spoke before the council. "You are right to fear them," she said. "They are everything you say. They are violent. They are stubborn. They refuse to accept defeat even when all logic says they should." She paused. "But when my world was dying, when every one of you turned away, the humans came. They bled for us. They died for us. They saved us." Her voice rang through the chamber. "You fear their strength, but I have seen what they use that strength for. They use it to protect the weak, to fight the darkness, to answer calls for help that everyone else ignores." She spread her arms. If that is what a death world creates, beings who refuse to let others suffer alone, then perhaps we need more death worlds in this galaxy. The vote passed, Earth was accepted. And across the stars, other species began to understand something they had never considered before. Humans were not monsters. They were simply the ones who answered when no one else would. And in a galaxy full of darkness, that made them something precious. That made them heroes.